Ah, yes. I know you may think that Halloween is over, but there's always a few stragglers left behind to disturb your day. Be afraid, my friends. Halloween never really goes away. Ever.
You know, when I was just a wee lad, actually I've never been a wee lad, I've always been an adult. I was born an adult. Hyundai decided to grace the U.S. market with their very first sport utility, which was the Santa Fe. And I remember the first time I tested one of those, and I was incredibly pleasantly surprised by what a neat vehicle it was. It was really solid. That was the first thing that impressed me about it, but it was a good sport utility. It did really well in the snow, back when we used to have snow here in New England. And it was just an all-around great vehicle, especially for the price. Well, as with everybody else, cars are starting to disappear, and there are 66 different types of sport utilities available from pretty much every manufacturer. And this is one of my favorite sizes from Hyundai. This Tucson is a compact sport utility. But again, it does that amazing thing that so many of these vehicles do, is it crams all kinds of room into a fairly small package in terms of driving in traffic and parking and putting it in your garage and everything else. It's a really practical size for people. You're looking at a wheelbase of 108.5 inches, which is pretty competitive with the class. And once again, I have to say this every time, I think the Hyundai styling department does incredibly good work. I mean, look at this thing. It has all these shapes, and it blends together in such a way that it's beautiful. I think it's a great looking car. And also, whenever you have these sport utilities like this, which is a crossover, it has automotive influence, I'll put it that way. You have to figure out what to do with the tail end of it, because you want to have enough room in the back so you have some cargo capacity, and at the same time you want to have a swoopy looking vehicle that looks more automotive than, say, a big old sport utility wagon type of thing. And they do a great job. I mean, they really, really do. What surprised me initially with this vehicle was how much room it has on the inside, especially in the back seat, but mostly in the cargo area, because I thought, because of its exterior size, that there would be a little bit of a compromise in terms of the cargo capacity in order to give you good rear seat room, right? Well, I was very pleasantly surprised, as you shall be, when you see how much cargo capacity we have back there. It does really well. But it's a real interesting vehicle. It is an all-wheel drive vehicle, and unlike I always put the benchmark of the class, in my opinion, because we own one, with the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid, because I feel like that's the gold standard, in my opinion, of overall functionality, reliability, fuel economy, the whole 9 yards. But competition is fierce these days, and everybody that enters the class, such as your Hondas, and here your Hyundais and stuff, they all have very, very competitive vehicles. I'll go into the all-wheel drive system because it's different than what Toyota does. And the engine is really interesting too, because you don't just have your hybrid supplement in that it is a gas engine with an electric motor, but it is a turbocharged direct injection gas engine. So it's state-of-the-art, 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 what everybody's doing all in one. And how does all this work together? Does it seem like a usual type of power plant, or does it seem strange and unusual and wonderful here on the day after Halloween? And it has something else that's a little bit different. It has an 8-speed automatic transmission, which is more of a conventional type of transmission than the RAV4 has. And like I say, I will be comparing it to the RAV4 quite a bit, because I think that's the one that everybody's shooting for, because that has been an incredibly good selling vehicle, and most of the people that have them are pretty happy with them, myself included, although my wife drives it all the time and I hardly ever get to drive it anymore. But it's a very, very versatile, great all-around 4-season vehicle. So, without further ado, I want to tell you all about this power plant, because it's interesting and it's beautiful and it's all Hyundai. Come with me and we'll go under the hood together. You hear that airplane up there? They're doing zombie patrol. You got to do that on the day after Halloween, because there's zombies that are, you know, sleeping it off and stuff. I have to mention one thing right away about this Hyundai, about this engine compartment. It has probably the heaviest hood, that guy right there, that I have experienced on a compact vehicle in quite some time. It weighs a lot. So that tells me a couple of things. One, I don't believe it's made out of aluminum. I think it's made out of steel. I could be wrong, but you never know. And also, it is very well packed in terms of insulating material to keep the engine quiet. So there you go. But that really surprised me right off the bat. And also surprising, I was expecting, as is usually the case with hybrids, or has been up to this point. Oh, where are you going? Get back there. I was expecting to have a conventional 4-cylinder engine with a hybrid power plant attached to it, meaning the electric motor, which is right over here, by the way. Here's your electrics, and here is your engine right here. But what we have, and I noticed right away, is, holy cow, look at all this plumbing. Look at all this. Is hybrid. It's also a SmartStream engine. And it's also 1.6 liters. Gee, I should mention that. Very, very small engine, the inline 4-cylinder. 1, 2, 3, 4. But the thing I noticed right away is all this plumbing. I said, wow, that looks like turbocharging, and it is. And you come in the front here, and here we have all this mechanization that comes up clearly. Clearly, the air is being cooled from an intercooler before it goes into the fuel injection system. And in the back, does that mean back here, back chair, we have a turbocharger? Yep. Whee! And there it is right there. There's your turbocharging array. So, whole lot of stuff going on with this engine to give you performance, and it does really well. What are our numbers, Boots? They all ask in unity. Well, the engine itself develops 178 horsepower at 5,500 RPM. And the torque number, very impressive, 195 pounds of feet between 1,500 and 4,500 RPM. So you got that nice basement right there. But then, over here, down in there, we have an electric motor, and that puts out 64 horsepower between 1,800 and 2,100 RPM. That's your peak for that, which is surprising, because usually they start at 0, but I don't, you know, Hyundai knows what they're doing. They're the engineers. I'm but a person talking about their car. So what's our total output? 231 horsepower. Very impressive. A little bit more than the RAV4, unless for 2025 they're changing something. I'm going back to your 2019 numbers, because that's what I own with the our RAV4. That's my standard of comparison. So it could be completely different. Hell, the new RAV4 may be hydrogen powered for all I know. But a very, very sprightly engine. It really is very responsive, and it's also very smooth. But then you have your electric side of things, which is a wonderful thing, because that does help your gas mileage. Now we'll see what we get. What really vexed me when I looked at the EPA estimates on this vehicle, it's 35 highway, 35 city, or something like that. But anyway, it's 35 miles per gallon overall, which is about 3 to 4 less in terms of fuel efficiency than the RAV4. So it's not as fuel efficient. More power, less fuel efficiency, which is interesting, which is an interesting choice. But we're all making choices. They're all making choices. All this is mated, of course, to a 6-speed automatic transmission. Did I say 8-speed earlier? God, I hope not. Well, it's 6-speed because the other version of the car, the non-hybrid version, is an 8-speed automatic. This is a 6-speed automatic. But it is conventional in nature. So it's not the kind of system that, for example, the Toyota Hybrid has what they call a CVT, but was actually, it's a series of electric motor interfaces that it's seemingly complex, but actually isn't. And it acts like a regular transmission in manual mode. So, but this has a more traditional type of automatic transmission, I think. I ain't cracked it open and looked at it, but I believe that. But isn't this amazing? Look at all this snaky activity here. You got your coolant system that's going directly into your electric motor array, and then you have a separate cooling system. Oh wow, did a fan just come on? It sure did. A fan just came on. I don't know why. And oh, Leon, there he is. I told him to stay out of the video I'm making, but he's okay. I like Leon. I'm gonna miss Leon. He'll be back next October, I think. But so anyway, air. It comes in here. It goes here into this huge air box. Then it goes around chair and goes into this thing here and goes into your turbocharging array. And then that comes out, goes down to your intercoolers, which are down there. And then that cooled air comes back up through this incredibly complex bit of electronics into the intake system. The intake system is, of course, right here made of a composite of some sort. They all are. I keep pointing this out because I haven't seen a steel intake system on a vehicle in a long, long time. And again, I say that there's a couple of reasons why they do that. It's cheaper to make it that way because they can make very complex forms into how the air flows through here to maximize efficiency and get the tumbling and everything else just right before it goes into the cylinder. As mentioned, we have gasoline direct injection, so the injectors are down lower. And the thing about gasoline, there's two things about direct injection, one of which is the fuel has to be injected at a really, really, really high pressure. And the reason for that is instead of just going into the stream of air, which we call port fuel injection up here, it actually gets directed directly into the cylinder, but that means it has to overcome the compression of the cylinder. So the fuel has to shoot in there with such intensity that it can actually get into the cylinder. Otherwise, a cylinder would just say, no, I don't think so, and it would just push the fuel right out. But that's one thing about it. So you have a very high pressure system. They're very safe though. The first thing I worry about is what if you have an accident and all that pressure is just going to shoot gas everywhere. Well, that doesn't happen very often because the systems are so designed that they can tell right away if there's a breach in the system, and it shuts down the fuel pump just like that, instantaneously. So that's a safety thing. The other thing about direct injection is it tends to build up carbon over the intake system over time. And there's different ways of dealing with that. Toyota deals with it because in a way with their new engines by simply having not just gasoline direct injection but also port fuel injection. And it switches back and forth depending on the circumstance, and that optimizes efficiency, but it also is really good at keeping the carbon buildup down. So that's the way they do that. Now, how Hyundai deals with it, I don't know. I haven't heard any stories about, oh my God, they're just terrible. They get all this carbon buildup at 100,000 miles and you have problems and you got to have it cleaned up. I have not heard that, but I haven't heard a lot of things. I know little about anything if you really push me hard. And wow, I just had a horse walk right back behind me. What is he doing? Oh, he's just being a horse. Okay, so kind of cramped in here, but not too awfully bad, as you can see. Here's our engine oil right here, and I don't see any placards telling me right off the bat what kind of oil we use. So I'll try to look that up if I can. That can sometimes be difficult to find. I'd say you're probably good off with the 0W20 is what I think this thing uses. That is a guess. Oh, wait a minute. It tells you to use right here. It recommends Shell Helix motor oil, but it doesn't say what viscosity. So, interesting. So then, what else can I tell you about this beautiful engine? I like the fact that it's got an engine cover on it, which I'm sure you can pop right off. More and more manufacturers are getting rid of that, so you open up the engine compartment and it just looks like a whole bunch of wires and hoses, and it looks horrible. And all these things are for, primarily, is to just neaten up the engine compartment. And some people say, oh, but it traps all that heat. Nah, it doesn't. It really doesn't. It's just a way. Manufacturers are always trying to find a way to do things cheaper so they can maximize their profit margin per vehicle. So thank you, Hyundai. Thank you for keeping this cool little, and it's small. Look, it's not even that big. It's just a little engine cover. But look how nice it looks. It dresses up the whole thing. All right, now I'm going to have to put the camera down while I lower this massive hood that weighs at least 1,000 pounds. Incidentally, you may be curious, what does this car weigh? This car weighs about 3,906 is what I'm told by Hyundai. 3,906 pound curb weight. And it is capable, if the trailer has brakes, to tow a 2,000 pound trailer. That's what they say. And I think you probably could. With 231 horsepower, yeah, why not? All right, with that, let's go look at the other stuff on the exterior of this vehicle. Ah, yes, the Michelin Primacy A/S. It is an old friend. It is not a stranger to us. We've seen it on a lot of vehicles. This is a real good all-around four-season tire, except for the fact that the tread is not that deep if you get into deeper snow or deeper mud. But all around, and in terms of fuel economy in particular, it's a very, very good, a good tire. Now we have some big wheels on it. We got big wheels. I believe these are 19. There's our tire size, which is 235/55 R19. Yeah, these are 19 inches of tireness. And there's a nice big brake caliper and a nice big brake rotor. Now, of course, you do have your regenerative braking on this, and that is when the electric motor swaps over and becomes a generator. And when that happens, it produces drag on the engine drivetrain, which is used to slow the vehicle as well as charge the battery. So this has a couple of settings, which I'll show you later, where you can mess with that. But that's one of my favorite features about hybrids, is the fact that you can actually, if you're going down a long hill, you can charge the battery right back up. Same thing with electrics, full electrics, by the way. And some of them have really elaborate systems of control that are a lot of fun. Instead of using paddle shifters, they use those for the regenerative braking, which I think is cool. But you know me. No, you don't know me. You have no idea. I prefer, personally, hybrids to full electrics at this stage in history. It's great that electrics don't produce any emissions during their operation, but there's upstream and downstream things involved that do produce carbon. Let's just say they do put out some pollution through their operation as far as the charging process is concerned, depending on where and how you charge your vehicle. But the thing I like most about hybrids is they're normal cars. This one has a range of easily, I believe, over 400 miles. And then it will take you a whopping 2 or 3 minutes to completely refuel it and keep on your way. And try that with a fully electric. If you're lucky enough to get a high-speed, high-output charging system on it, it won't take all that long to get it back up to full power, but it'll take a hell of a lot longer than it takes to refuel a car. And I like that versatility in a hybrid. You have the best of both worlds. A lot of people criticize him and say, well, it can't make up its mind what it wants to be. Is it electric? I'm not a fan of plug-in hybrids, really, but this is my favorite, a autonomous hybrid vehicle. And like I said, what beautiful lines we have. And I especially like the cargo room, which we're going to examine right now. Whee! All right, now check this out. The rear seats are deployed, as we say, and we have 38.7, I believe, cubic feet of cargo space. It's not the greatest finish in the world. It's just kind of got a lot of hard plastic, which is pretty normal for cargo areas on compact sport utilities. But this is especially a nice situation because you could put 2 or 3 good-sized suitcases in here with the rear seats deployed. If you fold them down, you get like 48 cubic feet, which is great. Now here's our tire mobility kit, which I hate. I prefer a spare. You could talk to your Hyundai dealer. Maybe it's possible to get a spare, temporary spare on this thing. Maybe not. Is there anything underneath here? No. There's a battery somewhere. A hybrid battery. I believe it's probably. Ooh, there. Whoa. What are we doing here? Oh, yep. Oh. There is. I don't know what that is. I like it. It almost looks like a fan. I don't know where the battery is. It could very well be underneath the rear seat. That's where Toyota RAV4 puts it. And well, look, if I find vents, if I discover the suspect vents, oh my God, there's a leftover Halloween kitty. Who is that? Who is that person? Who is he? God, if I didn't know better, I'd say that's our barn cat. Oh, sorry. I just hadn't seen him for a little while. I was just checking on him. But like I say, I'm always a person who prefers to have like some kind of spare tire. Full size is my favorite. Temporary spare, second favorite. Motility kit way down there. And the ultimate that I don't like is just run flat tires and nothing else. Because life is full of hazards. So anyway, like I said, 38.7 and then 40-something point something when the seats are folded, and you have a 60-40 breakdown. And there's a little autumn leaf, look at there. And a nice big opening and a good, I like the level of the lift over here is pretty high. But again, I will say this forever, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of times if you have a big heavy parcel, it's easier to not have to lower it down as far, and when you remove it from the vehicle, you don't have to reach down as far. In other words, it's easier on your back. I guess that's what he's trying to say. It's what I'm trying to impart upon you. Ooh, it's even quiet. Look at that. There we go. See, high track. That is the all-wheel drive system, high track, which we're going to go into at length in a little while. Because it's interesting in comparison to the RAV4 Hybrid. Okay, so what else do I have to tell you about the exterior of this vehicle? Again, beautiful styling. More than anything else, it doesn't come with any kind of an elaborate roof rack, but I'm sure you can do something with this as far as, I think you can probably get some cross hatches on there and put some, there's no end what the aftermarket offers also on cars, as far as if you want to put your bicycles up there or one of them big plastic carrier devices. I'm sure you could do that. I do like the lines on this car a lot. Hyundai and Genesis together, they just can't do wrong in my book in terms of styling. I think they've done such a terrific job. Not only do they have a unique look, but they also have a familial look that's common with all the Hyundais and all the Genesis, but at the same time, they have a certain amount of individuality. And though endeth the styling discussion. Ah yes, entrez-vous? Oui, entrez-vous. Is there coolness? Usually there is, but no, this is much more straightforward. Earlier I thought there was an occurrence. We have, similar to what GM is doing quite a bit, and actually more and more manufacturers, we have our instrument cluster, but we also have our center screen, and they flow together as if they are one. And you can hear the heaters kicked on because it's 45 degrees. It feels colder than that out there, I'll tell you what. But here is our master display in terms of our cluster. Now these little red lights that you can see here that are blinking, I believe that is a camera. There's a very annoying thing which I haven't figured out how to turn off yet, but it's more and more common. They're always trying to tell you, you know, you need to take a break. But unfortunately, that's keyed on things that don't make any sense to me. If I tilt this just right, I don't know. But I don't like it because I move my head around a lot. It comes from riding motorcycles for decades. I'm always moving my head around to look at traffic, to make sure I can see stuff. And for some reason, it often interprets that as me about to fall asleep. So you know, you get your little coffee cup and everything else, and it explains that you should turn off the road and find yourself a nice little cafe and get some coffee. But I don't do that, and I get annoyed when it tells me to do that. But anyway, I absolutely don't like heads-up displays. I don't know if you're a follower of this channel, you know me, I complain about them every time. I just don't like them. But here we have one, and I don't know if you can you see that? Can you make that out? Let's see if there's a, what happens if I do this? Nothing. But you have over in the upper left quadrant, you have a road sign that tells you what the speed limit is. Right now it's saying 0 because I'm not on the road, I'm somewhere else. And you also have a speedometer, and I think there's ways, let's see if we go to setup, and I go to heads up and clusters, and we go to heads up display and display adjustment control. Height rotation, you can do this and that, move it up and down. How do I do that? How do I do that after the IO system has been activated? What else do we have? Well, oh, here we go. Here's up 10 degrees and down, and it's not doing anything. How about if I do this? There's brightness. Oh, there we go. No, yep, no. I'm trying to move it left to right. There we go. Now it's moving. Now it's moving back and forth, and all kinds of interesting things. But you can adjust that, and here's my favorite adjustment right here. There we go. Get rid of it. I just find them distracting, and I argue that the whole idea behind them, of course, is that you can look forward and be watching traffic and also get information like your speed and all that stuff. But you have to focus on that in order to see it. When you focus on it, it takes your focus off the road in front of you. So that's why it's fine to have it. If you like it, you've got it. I like being able to turn it off, and it'll, on like some vehicles, Mazda, although I think they've pretty much fixed it, you can turn it on and off. And once you turn it off, it'll stay off until you turn it back on, no matter how many starting cycles you go through. So that's great. On our left-hand side here, you will see we have our convenience speedometer and our echo rating right there. That is our drive mode, and we have several drive modes, which I'll show you now. We have snow, my drive, which allows you to select a couple of individual settings, not that many, and then we have sport, which turns everything red, of course, and then we have eco, which is basically the normal drive mode. Now, before I forget this, I want to get right into this because I think it's really, really interesting. When you're in eco mode, or I think if you're in my mode, which when it goes, it actually, if you're in a situation, it'll change. Let's look at this again. It'll actually change what particular mode it's in at the time. In other words, if eco mode suits the type of driving you're doing at the time, it'll go there. And if you're in eco mode, you have plus and minus paddles on the steering right there. Well, right there and right there. Now, what are these for? When you're in eco mode, which we're not in, I'm sorry. Too many modes. Put them all in the car mode. There we go. Now then, we have a very interesting difference between what these paddles actually do. Now they're not doing anything now. I'd have to put the car in drive, which I shall now do. Now we're in drive, and I can't get the paddles to do anything. Not sure why that is, except for the fact that it could have everything to do with the fact that we're running 100% on the engine at the moment. There is no EV component. But if you are in the eco mode, these paddles do not shift gears like they do on most things. We're rolling forward now. How did that happen? What these are used for is for your regenerative braking, which in other words allows you to control the braking that it's doing just by itself without using the mechanical pedal actuated braking. And what that is simply when the electric motor swaps over and becomes a generator, and the drag that is produced with turning that generator helps to slow the car down. You have 3 settings when you're in the eco mode where you can increase right here the amount of freedom you have, where you can actually completely pretty much deactivate the regenerative braking. Or over here, if you increase the negative, that's actually negative as in slowing you down more, which increases the resistance from the regenerative braking. So that's what you have there. However, if you're in sport mode, which I am now, that's not what these do. These are manual shifters. Up and down. Up and down. So, oh man, I annoy even myself. So that way you can use manual shifting if you want to only when you're in the sport mode though. So you have 2 different purposes of these paddles. And that's really interesting. Gear is already selected. Yeah, I know, I just put you in park, dude. Oh, okay. So let's go back to eco. There we go. And as you can see, they're slightly different in terms of coloration on your displays, but they're basically the same. And you can do a couple of different things. You can have the car adjust the display depending on what drive mode you're in, or you can pick a drive mode display that you like and just use that. Well, I'll show you right here. Let's go to cluster theme selection, and classic. You can go to simple. Now that's classic. Let's go to simple. See, much simpler. You have a digital speedometer instead of an analog speedometer, and you have a digital. That's interesting. A digital tachometer for your engine. Now, so far, the engine has been running since I started the car, and the reason for that is it's cold outside, so it's heating up the engine so the heater will work. And I'm on automatic on my climate setting, so it's trying to get up to 68 degrees. And as mentioned, it's only 45 outside, so that'll, engine just quit. Good. We're now on the EV. Now, what happens since I'm in EV? I don't know. I think the car has to be rolling in order to activate the paddle shifting regenerative braking. I'll confirm that. But anyway, where were we? Oh yes, so that's our simple gauge style. Here we'll go back to classic, and you can also link it to drive mode, and you have 3 different modes you can pick from individually if you don't want it to link to drive mode, which is of course the classic, style A, style B, and style C. So A and B are pretty damn similar, don't you agree? Yeah, they sure are. We'll link to the drive mode just for the fun of it. Okay, so what else do we have? Well, while we're in the steering area, here is your cruise control center right here. This is how you activate your cruise control. This is up or down to set your speed, and you can pause and allow it to reset. If you hit the pause button, it'll just stay where your settings were. And if you want to hit resume, you hit it again, and it will resume the speed that you were set at before. This is your distance between the vehicle in front of you and you. And then we have our steering button here, which enables the car to steer itself, for the most part, in a lane tracing manner to try to keep you in the center of the lane that you're in. And I go over that extensively when we drive the car, because that's a big deal these days. This is just right up here to change our display. And as you can see, it's pretty much the typical stuff. We have a wonderful system here where it's very easy to figure out how to get through this, because you have a little thumb wheel right here. And once you're on this display mode, this will tell you the drive power distribution, what mode we're in, idle mode right now. So we're basically not, I can feel the engine running. That's interesting. The tachometer is saying 0, but I can feel the engine running because it's heating up the car. So that's interesting. Our current trip, we've gone nowhere. And since I put gas in, is 113 miles, have transpired with an average fuel economy of 34.1 gallons per mile per gallon. You know what that means, right? Okay. So there we go. So as we move over to our center screen here, and we'll go back to the home right there. This is a really nice setup too, because one of the things I'm always harking about, what I love about Hyundai's instrument cluster situation and the entire interface with the drivers, you still have a lot of buttons and switches. Like your radio right here has an on-off button and a volume button and a tuning button, just like radios of old. You don't have to go through menus on the touchscreen in order to do that. The touchscreen itself is very, very high quality HD TV type stuff. Very clear, very easy to read. Our navigation map is very straightforward. And there's the United States. Now, this car's headquarters is actually in Los Angeles, California, right there. But we are way, way over here in Connecticut, you see. That's interesting stuff right there. But yeah, you want to know where the home of Hyundai is? It's in Los Angeles on Railway Avenue. How about that? But here's our and I don't know if there is an easy way. No, I guess the engine wasn't on. It just kicked on. Huh. I don't know what the vibration I was feeling was. It must have been the fans for the heating system. Because one of the things about electric vehicles is when they're in their electric mode, there is no vibration from any kind of mechanical anything. They're that smooth. So if anything's going, in this case, even your defroster fans, you can actually feel any vibration that comes from that, which, believe me, when I say vibration, it's nothing you would notice or bother you in the least. It's just, it felt to me like the engine was running. So that's one of the joys of the electric world, is you have so much smoothness. And this car, of course, has that in spades. Now, as we look at our center screen, what else have we got? We got search, which is, you can look for navigational stuff, and then you can go over to media, and media has, of course, your radio, woohoo, and your sounds of nature, which, you know, I feel very personally close to the sounds of nature mode. Then you have your track and your seat and your favorites, and then the setup, which I was out there. And setup is pretty amazing because there's so much to it. You have all these sub-menus that all show you all kinds of different things that you can adjust on this car to really fine-tune it to whatever you want to do. Isn't it nice now that my heating fans have gone down to a normal level? It's much quieter. And we have a burning fire, as you can hear. No, this is not a Tesla. They don't have sound. I have no idea if they have sounds of nature or not, or anything approaching that. Good God, who knows? But it's a very peaceful thing to listen to. I think that's why I like it so much in this day of chaos. Anyway, so if we drop down from our center screen, which, like I said, has a million different sub-menus, so you can do a lot of fine-tuning of the system itself. By the way, I should probably look at drive mode here, and eco. What happens if I hit that? Nothing. It just goes away. Let's go down to my drive. That's what I'm looking for. Settings. There we are. Now these are the settings. If you put it in My Drive, you have a couple of choices here. Your powertrain can either be an Eco, Sport, Smart, or Baby. What's Baby say? Optimized for driving with an infant or child in the vehicle. I guess it rattles a lot or something. I don't know. I'll leave it on Smart for powertrain, and then steering you have two selections, Normal and Sport, and I'll leave it at Sport. Steering feedback on this car is very, very good. So we'll go back to map, and we'll drop down here. Now here is one of the few areas I always say that seems to be more standardized than most on most cars today, and that's your climate control system. Directly below all these nice convenient buttons that'll get you wherever you need to go quickly without having to go through touchscreen submenus. Right down here is all our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning controls. And you have seat heating right here, seat ventilation right there. Very, very easy. Driver only, so everything will be skewed just for, if I do that, there's nothing going on over there. It's just me. Then you have manual adjustment of your fan speed, heated steering wheel, heated, both sides, of course, have your heated and your ventilation for your front buckets, which incidentally are composed of this new space-age material called leather. Oh wait, no, that's leather. Oh, okay, they have leather seats, this particular limited model. We are limited, aren't we? I believe that's correct, yes. Okay, below that we have another little sub-center, which I like the way Hyundai does this. They kind of group everything together. Here is your auxiliary power station with two of your finest USB-C ports at the ready. And you also, if you push this here, you got access to a 12-volt power supply. Now, we'll move back a little bit. This little button right here is a favorite because we have an all-wheel drive system on this car, and this, when pressed, will lock the center differential. So that means you get equal power to both front and rear axles, so that's very convenient during off-road or snow or that kind of thing. It's very good for that. Then we have all your rest of your stuff. We have our camera setting here, which is always fun. Press the button to display the camera view, or press and hold and activate parking assist system. So neat, huh? We can do our 360 right there. Woo! There we are. And you can do this here. You see, look all around. I hear a dog out there, but I don't see him. I don't see him out there. He has not yet attacked me. So that's all good. And this is your rear camera, right? And this is your front camera. So you have all these different, look at this one here. You got that one. Oh, isn't that nice? So you have all these different settings that are absolutely beautiful to access all those cameras, because this has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. It has a minimum of 4 cameras. I think that's it. Maybe I'm missing one, but if you have all those cameras, it's so nice to be able to use them on demand. And this enables you to do that. Now, here we have our cup holders. Here's our hill descent, by the way. You have that just like a serious off-road vehicle, which uses your anti-lock braking system to gently lower you down the hill so you can concentrate on steering without your foot being on the pedal all the time. And here we have a very deep, but quite, I wouldn't call it that huge. It's a pretty decent size console. If you have larger items, like say a tablet computer or something like that, look at all the room you have in your glove box here. Very convenient we all are carrying so much more crap with us now than we used to. And speaking of crap, here's where you can charge your cellular phone device. And it's big because phones are getting bigger and bigger, as you know. And it uses NFC, which is your near field communications, also known as your charging, wireless charging. So you have that. You have all that good stuff. Now, if you take a look here at these leather seats, you could see how incredibly perforated they are. And the ventilation side, which believe it or not, just 2 days ago it was 80 degrees here. It works really well. It's very, very good. So overall, I give top marks for the overall front comfort because it's got everything you need as far as adjusting your temperature and everything else, and the contour of the seats themselves is very good. It doesn't have huge side bolsters. These are actually fairly modest, but support seems very, very good. And that's good because this thing actually handles nice and you can whip it around should you be so inclined to do so. So, let's take a look in the back seat now, shall we? And the door is quite roomy, big, a commodious type thing. Opens almost 90 degrees, but not quite. There we submit autumn. The autumn setting on Sounds of Nature is so good, leaves appear. You see, that's amazing. I don't know how they do that. Must be AI. But you have, by the way, you have a wonderful panoramic roof, and I don't have it all the way open. I should, though. Why don't I do that? Oops. All right, stop that. Put that back. Oh, huh. How can I do this without doing that? Like that. All right, there we go. Nice, huh? It really adds to a feeling of spaciousness. So you got very good leg room here. You have an almost flat floor, very, very mild little tunnel down there. And then you have 2 USB-C ports at the ready. Then you have these, if you want to put your magazine or your tablet computer, you can put it there with the expensive net that it uses. Here's something delightful. Heated rear seats with 3 settings. Look at that. I like that. Now then, the major window test. It's not auto down, but it does go down 100%, which is very important. We don't have any window shades, but yeah, that's for the really rich people. Here we have our map light. We got one on each side, depending on which side you happen to be sitting on and where you keep your maps. And then we have our armrest, which is at a very, very good height. I find this to be very comfortable for my personal self. So you got plenty of leg room, got a nice armrest. I mean, what more do you want, man? Support is good. It's at a fairly decent angle, which of course, I believe, let's have a look here. You might be able to adjust this. Yeah, there we go. Watch this. Whoa! Whoa! So you have a degree of you have a degree of reclining available to you, which is great. There's a lot of room back here. Headroom is outstanding. I'd say I'm 5'8" and I got about 2 or 3 inches above my head. So good, huh? So overall, this is an amazing car in terms of it's not that big on the outside, but it certainly has a lot of room on the inside. And as we went over before, the cargo area is quite generous as well. So Hyundai did a really nice job with the packaging of this interior, and it's also very comfortable and has all your fancy features. But again, they have a control interface system that is so much more familiar and logical than so much of the stuff out there. And to this, I say, thank you, Hyundai Tucson Hybrid Limited All-Wheel. Wow, look at this. Looks like there's about to be a clinic of natural horsemanship. Imagine that. How does one get involved with such a thing? Well, you could check out whatworkshorsemanship.com. You can try that out. Maybe learn something about where such a clinic might be for you. Shameless plugs, of course. That's our way. So, How's we doing off-road here on this rugged trail here? It's good. It feels solid. That's your number one thing on your suspension feeling when you're on a unimproved or otherwise nasty piece of road is how solid the vehicle feels. Because that's important. And whether or not it's filled with crickets. I hear that cricket. We haven't had much in the way of crickets our way. Basically, we've had a lot of tree frogs, which is kind of weird considering it's basically supposed to be late autumn, early winter. But the frogs, they do not look at the calendar. They check out what's going on naturally in the natural world, and they go from there. I do like the smoothness of this powertrain. It's really nice. The engine is very well isolated. That's something else Hyundai does well. Their engine mount system is really good to quell vibration, because your vibration has to be quelled. What else have I not talked about in this drivetrain? I haven't talked about the transmission. Transmission's very smooth. Snickety snick, it's good. And we have the ability to do this. These paddle shifters. Now, how do I do that? How do I do that? I'm not sure. Are these paddle shifters for shifting? Or are these paddle shifters for engine regeneration braking? Battery regeneration braking. That's what it is. How you like that? These paddles are not for manual shifting. As I mentioned earlier in this video, these paddles are actually for regulating your... Now we're on automatic. Now what happens if I take the drive mode selector and I go up to sport? What does it tell you? It doesn't tell you much of anything. How about this? Now we're manually shifting. So in order to manually shift, it has to be in the sport mode. 5 and 6. There we go. So that's how you access your transmission's manual mode, is you go into sport mode. You see? You see how I figured that out? You see? This is why they pay me the no bucks. And we'll go back to eco, and there we go. And now it reverts to engine braking. Oh man, that's really interesting. Really interesting, folks. Now, I don't want to take this Halloween thing too far, but on my autumn sounds, known as autumn sentiments, I just heard someone walking. A ghostly apparition. I don't know about these ghostly apparitions. I find them to be very ghostly in their apparitionness. All right, we're going to go down to one of my favorite roads here because it offers a variety of telltale heart. Poe, wow. See, I'm totally into Halloween, even though Halloween was yesterday or the day before, one of them days. I don't even remember, so many horrible things happened. I like this road because it has one particular bump in it. Well, two actually. Okay, three. It has a number of little irregularities in the road that are very telltale in terms of the chassis, in terms of suspension tuning, and how the car actually feels, if it feels heavy on its feet or not. And one of the things I'm real curious about, and I haven't gotten a sample of this, but I'm always going on about how most fully electric cars, unlike this hybrid, have these enormous batteries that weigh like 1,000 pounds. And that just adds onto the weight of everything else in the car. It adds 1,000 pounds to it. Granted, you don't have the weight of your gasoline engine, but at the same time, they're getting smaller and smaller gas engines with, like the displacement on this one's only 1.6 liters. And with a turbocharger attached, when that turbocharger doesn't weigh very much, so a real big fella can pull that engine right out of there, just lift it out. Well, probably not. It's probably 300 or 400 pounds. I don't know. But when you have an electric car and you have all that additional mass, you have to have a suspension that can handle the weight, especially weight transfers when you go through dips and things like that. And it's a good measure, this road, on how balanced the car is as far as, is the suspension firm enough to handle all that? And if it's firm enough to handle all that, does it also deliver a stiffer ride because of that? Incidentally, the default positional and drive mode is, of course, Eco, so I'm going to go down to my drive, which is my favorite, because it does a few little things. There's not that much when you change drive modes on this car. The main thing it changes is throttle response, and I believe the transmission shifts at a little bit different time in the rev range as opposed to being in the Eco mode. And for all I know, it may actually, with a hybrid, it also determines how often the engine is actually running, whether or not it's running in concert with the electric engine, or if put it this way, the engine runs more to deliver more power for more response, i.e. the sport designation. But in my drive, you still have access to economical things, like more than anything else, unless you want to go with the full sport mode in the My Drive mode. But I think if you want to do that, you just want to go directly into My Drive. All right, we're going to hit that bump I was telling you about. We also have a collection of bumpy corners, and bumpy corners are also really good indicators of how the suspension is balanced. This car does real well. It does, for one thing, it feels light on its feet, and it tracks really nicely, and the steering weighting is very good. I have it on a sportier. It's one of the things My Drive mode can let you adjust is the steering, and I have that steering set on sport, which is a little tighter. Here comes the bump I was talking about. Oh, I've already been through it. That's how well this thing is balanced. A lot of that has to do with cars that tend to be lighter, tend to float over things a lot more effectively. I used to think, and I pretty much still do, if you guys can go back and remember the Toyota MR2, which was a little mid-engine convertible, that thing was really light, and I used to, and this thing's the same way, it just flies over these bumps. The thing that fascinated me about that thing is it was very, very stable. It didn't get blown around easily like you think a light car typically does, but at the same time it handled really well, and bumps meant nothing to it. It just kind of floated over them because it was so light. It was like a waif, a thing that just floated about. I'd say fairy, but sometimes people get upset if you use that word. So, but it was to this day, I think it's one of the lightest cars I've ever driven, and it had almost like that Mini Cooper thing where you had a wheel at every corner, and that helped make a very light chassis stable, which incidentally Mini Coopers do that too, although they actually weigh more than you might think. All in all, this is just a very nice driving car, regardless of what it is, regardless of the fact that it's a little SUV, regardless of the fact that it's a hybrid. It just drives nice. Here we are. So, welcome to the rear suspension of our Hyundai Tucson Hybrid Limited all-wheel drive. As you can see, we have a lot of excellent ground clearance. Surprising for a compact vehicle of this type, because they're not always huge in the ground clearance department. But one of the big things I want to show you, first of all, you have your upper and lower control arm situation, and my device is not working. There it goes. There's our lower arm, and here is our coil spring device, and here's our drive shaft right there. And mounted outboard here is our shock absorbers, so we don't have a coil over shock situation. It's they're separate. They go their own ways. Isn't it nice how clean all this is? I love these new cars because you can actually see stuff. But it's kind of a multi-link affair, and there's your front link right there. You see that swivels up and down to all locate the rear tire no matter how much traveling it's doing. And one of the big contrasts I want to point out here between this and, say, the RAV4 hybrid is the RAV4 has a separate electric motor that powers the rear drivetrain, and it only kicks in when necessary. When you're slipping, you have slippage between the front and the rear axles, then it will activate. And it also activates at other times if your acceleration is such, especially from a standing start, it will kick in and help the whole sometimes the system. It'll actually be biased towards the rear, but it's completely separated from the front drivetrain, including the internal combustion engine. So this is different. This is more of a traditional type of system, and the system I think is actually a little more rugged. What you have is there's your drive shaft right there. You can see that there. And right here is your rear differential. So it has more of a conventional drive shaft rear differential setup. This actuator here is one of the things, or the thing, that engages and disengages the actual rear axle drive system. Naturally, that drive shaft is probably, I would assume, is turning all the time, but it's freewheeling inside here until this thing kicks in and then sends the power to the rear differential as well. And you have a switch, which I've showed you earlier, that will lock up the differential, which is forward here somewhere in there. There's your exhaust system and your catalytic converter. Is that a catalytic converter? That's really far back from the engine. I don't know what that is. It could be a mufflerette. But how it works is it's normally a front-wheel drive vehicle until the rear wheel slips, or if you hit that button, it will split the torque 50-50 between the front and the rear drivetrains. But this gets no power, I don't think, at any real level from your electric motor. It is more directly from the gas engine. And like I say, it's a more rugged setup that way. And it's more conventional than what the RAV4 does. But it is real interesting with the RAV4 because it's just, you have a wire similar to this electric wire right here, as you can see, that runs to the rear drivetrain, and that's it. There is no drive shaft running from the front to the back. Which system is right for you? You have to think about that yourself. If you spend a lot of time in four-wheel drive, like on mountain trails and stuff like this, I'd go with this. This is more of a conventional system. But if you are like most people and just need it during your rear drivetrain during certain times in snow and stuff like that, slippery conditions, then the RAV4 type system is a better system. So, as you can see, we have ample rear braking with a big old caliper there. And there is a subframe. This is, of course, a unibody construction. So here is your subframe right here, as you can see there. So that is the part that helps to isolate the road from the cabin itself, because it's isolating it from the entire unibody. Not as rugged as a body-on-frame construction, of course, that trucks have, but perfectly good for an automotive situation and a SUV situation like this. Did say there is towing you can do. I believe it was 2,000 pounds, provided that the trailer has brakes.
And what else? What else? Once again, if I may stress, look at all this ground clearance. I mean, this is really nice to keep things out of harm's way. This is a slight shield. I'm not sure what that's shielding. Hell, maybe that's where the battery is. I haven't found it yet on this vehicle as to where they actually keep the hybrid battery, the lithium-ion battery. This is your fuel tank right here, and it appears to have a plastic shield, but maybe that's not it at all. That may be just that may be the tank we're looking at, in which case its main protection is the fact that it's nice and high and tucked in. But then again, what's this over here? So maybe the gas tank is this thing. I don't know. It's interesting. But there's a lot of, it looks like if they did it that way, that would be, I'm sure, for balance, to balance the weight of the fuel, which is just to balance the entire vehicle. Yes. I don't see any kind of a recovery hook back here, but really good. I don't know exactly how they would install a trailer hitch if you did want to tow that 2,000-pound load, but I'm sure there's a way to do it. They probably have. I would think as an accessory one you could buy. So there you go. There's your rear suspension on your Hyundai, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's as clean as it's ever going to be right now.
Well, let us discuss weighty matters. The 2025 Tucson Hybrid Limited All-Wheel Drive has a suggested retail price of $40,945, and with options we came to $42,550. A very nice vehicle, this car. It's a real good competitor for the other hybrid compact SUVs out there. The gas mileage I got was it's estimated at 35. I got about 31, but I was driving very aggressively. But I tell you what, it is such a good overall package, and Hyundai has done a great job once again. They give you plenty of room in the front and back seats, plus some cargo area, and you have a very responsive powertrain that seems to be very, very smooth. I think the mileage, incidentally, will get better with time. This vehicle only had about 2,800 miles on it, and I am a big believer that, yes, vehicles have to actually break in. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you're well. I hope you continue to be well, and I promise you one thing, we'll catch you next time.
The tube tells you. You dress like the tube, you eat like the tube, you raise your children like the tube, you even think like the tube. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion.